Hey guys, it's Practical Gaming and I'm back for another issue of the top 3 indie games that I've found in the last month. This video took a while to get out, partly because I needed a bit of a break and partly because it was hard finding indie games that I really liked this month. But this time around we've got all 2D games, one from a past developer I featured, a remake of a video game classic, and yet another 2D platformer, so I hope you like what I've got in store. As always, I'll leave all the links to the games that I found in the description below so that you guys can check them out for yourselves. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're new because it really helps. So, let's get into it. First up we have Yarn Town by Max Moraz, a 2D top-down game which in his own words is a Zelda-like tribute to Bloodborne. Now if you've ever played Bloodborne before, then this indie game will be right up your alley. Unlike to the original game, Yarn Town throws you right into the mix in this cursed gothic town that's been completely taken over by creatures and monsters, and it's your job to basically explore around and kill as many as you can to progress. Yarn Town takes a lot of the same mechanics and ideas from Bloodborne. You have echoes which you can use to increase vitality, endurance, strength and skill, blood vials which you can use to heal yourself mid-battle, and bloodstones which you can collect throughout to upgrade your weapons. And of course it would be a Bloodborne tribute with an abundance of barrels to roll into. Obviously the 2D landscape is a bit different, but you do have similar mechanics and controls from Bloodborne, like diving and using your blunderbuss and blade to go on the offensive, which to me was the main attraction over Dark Souls. Max Moraz must be a huge fan of Bloodborne because there was a lot of attention to detail in how the world looks and it has a lot of similarities to the main game. The way the paths wind back around, the enemies that spawn in your way, and the general layout is very similar to Bloodborne. There are campfires like in Bloodborne, use your echoes like in Bloodborne. He even included 2 iconic bosses from the original game which you can fight, the Cleric Beast and Father Gascoigne, and while both bosses aren't as difficult, there is definitely a degree of difficulty that comes with these fights, which is much appreciated. He calls it a Zelda-style tribute to Bloodborne. I don't particularly agree with this sentiment. For me, there's little to no Zelda-like elements in this game. There's no inventory, no dungeons and puzzle solving, and it isn't that much to find when exploring Old Yharnam. As a 2D Bloodborne style game, I think Yarn Town does an excellent job. However, to truly say it's Zelda-style version of Bloodborne, he needs to implement some of the mechanics that make Zelda, Zelda. Either way, I had a lot of fun playing this game and I highly recommend it, regardless of how insanely impossible Father Gascoigne is. Next up we have The Librarian by Octavio Navarro. Now I've talked about another game, The Supper, by the same developer a couple months ago and I thoroughly enjoyed playing it, so I went into this with high expectations, and Octavio did not disappoint. The Librarian was actually released in 2018 but got a remastered version for 2020, and it has a similar playstyle to The Supper. It's a point-and-click short puzzle story game about discovering what's going on at the library that takes no more than 20 minutes to finish. You wake up because you hear something supernatural going on and you go down to the library to investigate. To do this, you collect items throughout like books, candles, and artifacts that will help you in finding a way through the library. Not everything is as straightforward as it seems though, so you really have to think through and have a good look around to see what works. Luckily for me, the game came with a walkthrough, which for the sake of the video really helped. I've always been a fan of 2D pixel art games and that's what drew me to The Librarian as well. Even though the color depth is fairly limited, you can get a surprising amount of detail using this style. Though at the same time, it did make it a bit more difficult to discern what items I could and couldn't pick up. This is before The Supper where he improved on this, but if it wasn't for the walkthrough, I would have really struggled to progress despite the linear nature of this game. There are also a limited number of items and unlike in The Supper, you can't mix them together and they're used less creatively. However, I do understand this is his first work, so there are bound to be some kinks to work out, as evidenced by this jump option which, as far as I can tell, is not needed whatsoever. It's short, it's sweet, and a good way to pass the time if you've got 20 or so minutes to spare. If I was you, I'd give it a go. And finally we have BirdGut by Micah Bozier, a hand-drawn 2D puzzle platformer where you play as a bee inside the gut of a bird. You're an outcast bee that's been swallowed up by a bird. However, the inside of the bird is not what you'd expect. It's actually a complex mechanism with facilities and factories where the bugs inside are enslaved, brainwashed, and forced to do certain tasks. As another one of the bugs inside, it's up to you to make your way around the insides and get to the bottom of it. At the heart of it, this game is a platformer, and a pretty fun and hard one too. It starts off pretty simple with some standard puzzles to complete, but as you progress, the levels get harder and more creative, while still keeping the theme of being inside a bird's stomach. For example, this factory-like saying where it says to be aware of acid must mean that you are deep in the stomach of the bird. There are even pumps and pipes which may signify the bowels and are a very fitting and clever way to work in as an interesting puzzle mechanic. BirdGut involves a lot of common techniques you see in a lot of other platformers, but it doesn't feel reused. However, they did involve a section which involves waiting around for something to happen, which is annoying and time consuming, and I find it frustrating that a lot of platformers do this. I think BirdGut is really fun and enjoyable, and I don't know how it took me this long to find it. The black and white hand-drawn sketchbook style is perfect, the gameplay and controls are tight, and it has possessed snails with cannons on their back. Like, what more can you ask for? If you're looking for a solid platformer, then I would suggest BirdGut. It's weird and wacky, but you'll love it. Well, that's it from me. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe, and make sure to leave a comment down below about what you guys thought about this month's indie games. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.